Is this a shared blessing or a dangerous open window for forces beyond our awareness? I'll keep my eyes open for other things to ask next week so you won't get stuck with Gary's goofy questions. Gary was asking some silly questions to get it started. So that's it.
Okay. Well, the last part of your question there was fuzzing out on my end, so I don't know what that is. Here's hoping that doesn't continue. And here's hoping I'm not fuzzing out on my end.
Okay, so you only heard the first part?
I heard most of the second part. The first part was how much do we need to know in order to pray effectively? The second part was, what if it's somebody else's gods? What if we're praying across perceived boundaries? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
And the last part that you missed was just a silly joke, so we'll go ahead and leave that.
Okay, well, I don't know who. Maybe there was a heavenly editor there that just totally bleeped that out.
Okay.
Well, thank you, dear heavenly editor, whoever you are. Okay. The first part of the question has to do with how much do you need to know in order to pray effectively. Now, my belief is that you work with your humanhood. It's nice to know as much as you can know. On the other hand, it's not necessary to know anything. Prayer is a mystery. Prayer is a way of tabernacling with the one infinite creator. And you're reaching through the gateway to intelligent infinity to do that. Now, the creator is only unitary. Obviously, the law of one says there is only one creator, and that creator is infinite and unified. So we don't have to worry about the boundaries across which we're going to pray. We don't have to worry about how much we know. It's comforting to us to know as much as possible, but you see, pretty much what you know is what the doctors have told the person that's ill or what the person thinks his problem is. And a lot of times this isn't even entirely accurate or, full information. So you're always playing with half a deck as far as knowing what's going on. So you're not praying because you know. You're not praying to somebody you know. You're praying to an infinite mystery. And you're saying, I'd like to draw your attention to this part of your infinite creation. And would you please send your angels to lift up this person because he's really in a bad way. Or right now, there are two nation states on my personal prayer list, India and Pakistan. How do you pray for a nation state? Well, you just leave it in God's hands. You can't really be in too much detail about that for which you're praying, but we had a request to pray for India and Pakistan, and I know that there are terrible, terrible problems there, the same kind of problems that we had at one time in the war between the states, where there was a tremendous prejudice against people that were not white. Well, there is a tremendous prejudice on both sides between the Hindu and Buddhist way and the Muslim, Islam, Baha'i, etc. way. There are lots of Islamic peoples in Pakistan and India, as well as lots of Hindus and Buddhists. And even though we all know that Hindu and Buddhist people preach peace, and so does Islam, there are always those who interpret dogma conservatively and find it necessary to judge others who are not like themselves. So that creates a great deal of problem. I don't have to say all that. I just have to say I bring your attention, Lord, to India and Pakistan. I'm also bringing attention to somebody whose perceived problem is alcoholism. There's a gal, one of my relatives, that has macular degeneration. I'm praying for a woman whose health is frail and whose husband is no longer able to help her. I'm praying for a man that has just died, and so I want to be with him for about 10 days while he completes his healing and enters paradise and absolutely knows where he is and who he is with and so forth. So there are all kinds of reasons that you might have intercessory prayer. And I led the intercessory prayer group at my parish church for 23 years. So this is an old, familiar subject to me, and I honestly believe that it does not matter what you know. What matters is that you genuinely want to help. And if you genuinely want to help, then you can pray in a number of different ways. One of my favorite ways is to find a hymn I love to sing. I've been singing in choir since I was 4, so I know most of the 700 hymns in the Episcopalian hymnal, and I'll go and I'll get that hymn that speaks to me about that particular person and that particular problem, and I'll just sing it with my heart in my throat. And, it probably isn't entirely pretty, but it is, totally heartfelt. And I think that's the thing about intercessory prayer is the knowledge that you're speaking to somebody. You're speaking to somebody effective. I knew a very skilled prayer person who was able to declare, she was a Christian Science practitioner, that there was no power in alcohol. And the way she prayed for this person who had a problem with alcohol was to affirm the fact that there was no power in it. And this patient, I guess you'd say, or this client for whom she was praying, developed an inability to enjoy alcohol. It wasn't that it made him sick. It just didn't do anything, so he quit using it. You just don't know precisely what's going to work, and you have to go with what you feel. As far as infringing on somebody's free will, if you pray for them, you're not saying, okay, this is what I want to do, this, and this, get it done. You're imaging, you're visualizing that person in complete and absolute shining health, seeing that person as whole. You have no idea where Spirit's going with that. Spirit will do what it needs to do with that. You don't have to know. And let's see, the other part of it was talked basically about praying across boundaries. Can a Christian that's a Protestant join, say, a novena? Can pray the Rosary or something like that? Absolutely, absolutely. It's the same Christ. It's the same church. It is one God, one church, one Christ, one Spirit among the people of Christ. And it's really too bad that the way we had to object to the Catholic Church back in the 16th century, Martin Luther, all of that, was to make a difference between and take the incense and the flowers and the chalice and all of this stuff away from the altar and make it plain. I mean, this suited Martin Luther, and he had a good point, but it distracts people from seeing that there is only one Creator. And in the Christian church, there is only one Jesus Christ. And it is that Jesus, the King of Love, to whom we pray. Not necessarily a Catholic Jesus or a Protestant Jesus or whatever brand of Jesus, but one Jesus. The Jews and the Islams also have Jesus. And in reading Paramahansa Yogananda's little gem of a little book, his autobiography, he said that Jesus is one of his favorite teachers, and he always declares of himself that he is a disciple of Christ. So you see, there is really only one love. There is only one Creator. And so there is no need to harness your prayers to some dogma, not your own, not somebody else's, but just stay within your open heart, within that faith which has nourished you. And out of that nourishment that has fed you so well, open it up and ask to feed others. Ask that it come through you. As far as using saints or angels, I use them when it occurs to me. And if it doesn't occur to you, then don't worry about it. But if you suddenly get a feeling, oh, I want to send an angel to this person, then call on the angels and say, angels, please send somebody to this person, for he needs to be lifted up. And then tell that person, by the way, I sent you an angel, so you have to ask for the angel in order for the angel to help you, love you, and make you saved. Monica, is there a follow-up to that question in your mind?
Yeah, just a real quick question about what if it's something specific, like if the person has asked for prayer, or let's say they haven't specifically asked for prayer, but maybe they have an illness or something like that. Do you think it's important to ask permission from that person to pray that they receive physical healing? Because, since we don't really know what is for the highest good for that person, or what their pre-incarnational programming or what their karmic issues may be, do you generally just see them in perfect health and perfect goodness, or do you think it's sometimes appropriate to pray for specifics?
Well, I think it's probably best to use the visualization method and see the person in perfect health without really going into the details, because so often you'll discover that the details aren't what's necessary. I remember one time I was visualizing a fellow that had supposedly he had brain tumors, and I visualized this person's head, and I was visualizing this head completely filled with light. Well, all of a sudden, everything in my visual field, of course this is inner sight, so it's a feeling rather than an actuality, went white. And I called up my girlfriend, whose son it was I was praying for, and I said, the wildest thing happened, and I told her. And she said, well, the wildest thing happened here. She said, just right when you were praying, she said they did a CAT scan to see where the tumors were, and they couldn't find any. They'd all disappeared. So I think if I'd been saying, close that tumor, make it smaller, it wouldn't have been the same as just visualizing that person in the light. So I think, it's probably better to let them work it out, or the Holy Spirit, or whatever you want to call the mystery. Let the mystery work it out, and just consider that you're interceding. You're standing between that person and his condition. Now, as far as whether it's ethical to do that without letting the person know, I think it's ethical to see that person in total clean health without letting the person know. Now, if you're going to lay hands on the person, if it's going to get personal, if it's going to be intimate, if you're messing with their stuff, if you're going to write them, say, about some advice, ask them first. Don't just tell them that, you can get well, and I know you can get well, and if you'll just take this, you can get well, or if you'll just see this person, you can get well. That's not ethical. You just have to say, is it okay if I pray for you? And is it okay if I give you some advice? And get their permission first if you're going to mess with their stuff, because intercessory prayer is not that which is going to interfere with their experience. But if you physically put yourself next to that person in an email or in physical contact, then you definitely need to ask permission before you open your mouth.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question from the Bring Forth Forum from Matt Scryer. He says, Carla, very nice to connect with you. My question is regarding the distortion of free will. I've been thinking lately about the nature of influence and how it appears to me that our actions, thoughts, and desires are all stemming from where we find ourselves in a given moment, along with the influence of how we perceived, lived, and experienced our previous moments. I don't see where will can be truly free of influence, and I'm curious to hear what insight you can offer regarding this topic. I sense that we live the experience of making choices and having free will, and understand this to be what Ra refers to when they use the word distortion. I'm grateful that my influences have led me to a place of experiencing, choosing, loving, appreciating, balancing, etc. But I don't see how one who is influenced in another direction can be expected to live the same choice or experience. Can we really lighten the planetary vibration beyond what is influenced to be? Or are we simply living the current complexity of all that is, which in this place and time happens to be living the experience of lightening the planetary vibrations and balancing the energy centers within what we call ourselves? I'd love to believe in free will and often do, but a part of me also is confused as to the true nature of this experience of choice. So my question may be simply, where does free will originate from within the experiences of a self? He has a second part to the question, but I'm going to leave it here so that it doesn't get totally lost because it's a little long.
Keep going.
Okay. I've come to a place where all is equal and all is beautiful, and this material has helped greatly in my path of seeking. The differential and polarity of all that is, within my current understanding, is what directly supports and defines our experiences of desire, appreciation, fear, lack, and many other experiences that drive us to continue living this experience altogether. together. I sense that if we were truly free in our will, then this would indicate an ending of the creation, not a continuation of it. There must always be greater than and less than, in my view, for experience as we know it to be able to continue.